Welcome everyone to our cores tracking and management webinar. This is going to be a review today of how to add cores to your system, how online parts ordering adds cores to your systems, and how we manage them once we have them in our program as far as getting credits back from our vendors, purchasing used cores if we're a rebuilder, and different reports that gives us visibility into those. So we're going to start with just adding a part from the part search with the Add a Part wizard to see how cores are actually added as part of that part record. So click on Add Part Search and click on Add Part. Now this is pretty straightforward. We'll just put in a sample part number. And when we click on this screen, the system defaults to new for condition. So what we need to do is just change this to rebuilt. It's really just something that's tracked in the record, but it also prints on the repair order as an R next to the part so that we know that the customer is actually purchasing a rebuilt part versus a new part. And I'll go ahead and click Next and put in our base cost, list cost. And this next screen is really important. This is where we actually activate the core tracking feature in the part record. So by checking this box, it makes these fields active. So we would put in a core cost for this part, perhaps $25. Now this is our cost. This is what we pay to the vendor for that core charge whenever we buy a remanufactured part. Now the price that we sell this to the customer, if they don't return their core back to us for us to get credit back, let's say they want to take the core with them, or the core is so damaged that we're not going to be able to get credit by returning it back to the vendor, we're going to charge our customer. A lot of folks will charge the exact same dollar amount. Some folks will actually increase this a little bit if they want to have this as a profit center. Now you'll notice that our system is set up to default to track our new cores and our used cores in the same general ledger account under the cores product code. So for this example, we'll go ahead and leave this, but we'll revisit this and talk about how we can track our cores in separate accounts on our general ledger. Now, a lot of folks, as they're going through this Add a Part wizard, will actually enter in a quantity of used cores in stock. Now, this really is only if you do physically have a used core in stock. Let's go back to the Advanced tab, for example. This is if we had an actual current stock on hand of that alternator, we may perhaps put a quantity of 1. But that still would not have us say we have a used core in stock unless the way I kind of keep them separated, I have a dirty, greasy old core that needs to go back for credit. That's the only time we say we have a used core in stock, because MaxxTraxx knows if I have in my system, and I put in my Add a Part wizard, that I have a current core on hand of 1, it knows that there's a core charge associated with it because we actually add that here. So what's interesting, let's go ahead and click Next, and we'll save this, this new record. If I go back into that part number, and that was this one I think we just created, and we'll double check 1. Now this is my stock screen in my part record, and if it says stock on hand quantity 1, it actually is also tracking a, kind of look at it this way, a new core charge because it hasn't been replaced yet with a dirty, greasy old core, right? But the system doesn't actually track anywhere on this screen that we have in inventory a $35 core charge. It just knows that we have the charge for the original core, the new core purchase. So that I know for some shops, they're always looking for that. If I click on cores, it's not showing anything here. It's not showing any used cores. Then the reason why this is very different, these are used cores And the system tracks here under stock, the stock on hand, that core is here. That core charge is here. It's just not itemized. So any questions there? Is that clear for everyone?
Yep.
Okay, great. So let me go ahead and show you what it would look like when we add this part. Let's go ahead and change this name of this other one. Let's go ahead and add this part. To a repair order. So if we go into a repair order and we're adding a labor, let's just replace alternator. Okay, we'll just leave that for an example. Okay, this is just our, we've got to create a labor, of course, if we ever want to add a part. So let's go ahead and save that. So here, if I click on Add Parts, get it from my parts list, I'm going to bring over that alternator that I just brought in stock, and I click OK, it'll prompt me. It'll say here, and this is a pretty important screen that some people get a little bit confused about. It's saying this is our core received, and here no deposit is charged to the customer. But what this is actually doing, it's saying that we're receiving a unit of a used core, and we're actually going to add that to our inventory of used cores as far as tracking on the general ledger. Now our quantity will go up because we actually received a used core, right? So that's something that we're going to be able to return to our vendor. So if we were to say, for example, core not received, deposit charged to the customer, we click this, it's going to add that $35 to their bill, and we're not actually going to have any core to go back to our vendor. Because remember, one thing I want to be real clear about, when I add the part number here to sell the part to the customer, I'm actually selling both the alternator and the new core charge. I'm actually selling that, and I'm giving the customer an opportunity to say, hey, keep that new core charge. I'm going to give it back to you so you can give it back to your vendor for credit. Now, if we say core not received, no deposit charged, all that means is we're not adding one to our used core inventory to return to our vendor, nor are we actually charging the customer any money. So let's go ahead and say we're going to receive the core, and we're going to have that available to return back to our vendor for credit. And 95% of the time, I think this is typically the case. Any questions right now? Any questions on what we're just looking at? So real quick recap, we are actually selling the alternator, and the new core charge is going to the customer, and we're actually getting a used core in return. We're getting a quantity back, and of course not charging anything to the customer. So now if we go ahead and pay this out, let's say this customer pays for this job, and they're happy, and we just apply payment and click finish. So, okay, customer's gone. We don't even have to worry about that anymore. So now if we go into a restock parts ticket, and what we want to do is we want to create a restock parts ticket to process the credit we receive from that vendor for returning that core. So I click on here, we'll just say it's AutoZone. We'll say it's minus 25 because that's how much we get for that credit. And add line item. And here we select receive credit for returned used core. And that's where we view all of our cores, and we can actually select off of this list, this alternator. That's the one we just sold, and this is the core. So as I click OK, I'm going to add it to my list, and here is a credit. So and I'm going to go ahead and post this on accounts to my vendor. So I'm going to post it to accounts payable, and I'm going to update my inventory, which is reducing my cores on hand. Let's say, for example, that we haven't actually gotten the paper back. We haven't gotten the physical paper back from AutoZone saying, yeah, you guys got an invoice or got a credit memo, and here's a credit memo number. So let's just save it. And let's take a look at something real quick. We have a report under inventory category that says core banking report. And what this tells us, if we click on run report, okay, we don't have anything in there right now because we haven't stored any. So let's look at our core valuation. So here I can see, it's a little bit small, I don't know if you guys can see this. Let's see, our alternator that we just sold, AL86X, and let's see, core average cost, $25, that's right. See, I have that, quantity 1, $25, because I haven't actually gotten it back. I haven't actually gotten that credit back, right? So let's go ahead and save and post that credit that we just got for AutoZone, that credit memo. So we're going to go back into our restock parts. Here's our credit memo. We're going to go ahead and open it, and we're going to post and update our inventory. And let's say, for example, our is a credit memo invoice number. And click OK. So let's go back to that report. So we're going to look at inventory, core valuation, run report. So now when we look at this, you can notice that AL86X, not the one, the other one that we actually are using in that one RO, is gone because we actually returned that used core back to the vendor. So it's not showing up as a value of a tangible property that we have in our inventory. So that's a little bit about how the workflow works on cores. Now, couple of things. Let's look at if we were to order a part from an online parts catalog. How does it handle the cores? Very similar. A lot of it's automated for us. So if we go into, let's say, this Ford Escape, and we're replacing a starter. So I'm going to go online to AutoZone again, and I'm going to select my starter. Under electrical, starters, go to my parts list. And I do have my system set up to add my catalog parts to my inventory. So when I go in here and order this remanufactured starter and add it and transfer it to my RO, it prompts me right here. System knows. It says this part has a core. So I'm just adding it to my repair order. Was my core received? And yes, it was. And here it's actually saying my core is $32. Let's say, okay, yes, it was. So now when I go ahead and save this and look at the part record we just created for, I'll write it down, a DL3267S. Let's look at that. And that just prompts us to order it, of course. But if I go to my parts search and look at DL3267S, here we go. Okay, we saw right here that it is already designated as a rebuilt part automatically. So that happens automatically for us. And if I click on stock, I have -1 stock on hand because I haven't entered my restock parts ticket again yet, right guys? Now remember, we're not tracking anywhere. It doesn't say here -1 starter core because we don't actually track that anywhere. But it is actually tracked on the general ledger. I'm going to show you that here in just a moment. Let's jump down to cores. And you can see the check mark for cores is automatically tracked, set to track cores. When it comes over from that online parts catalog, it has the core's last cost. And it actually does default to the customer. When you use a catalog part, you actually charge the customer the same as what you paid for it. It doesn't set it up to be a profit center. So if you are going to be making some money on charging for used cores, you would actually, or not returned cores, I should say, you would need to physically go into your part record and change that. But what we do have here, it says quantity used cores in stock. Well, why does it say quantity used cores in stock right here? I just brought that over. Well, why it does is because, remember, on our repair order, we said, yes, we received a core from the customer, no core charged. That's why we're now showing 1 in stock. So we do have 1 to return. Now, something I wanted to bring to your attention on this screen is in MaxxTraxx, we default to track all of your new cores and your used cores in the same product code, which goes to the same general ledger accounts. Let's look at these real quick. If I click on Select, you can see we just have one product code, cores. And it's saying that here, same for the used cores, it's tracking all of our cores in its own inventory used cores account. It's tracking our income in the same sales used cores account, or new cores account, and it's also moving them to cost of goods into the same cores account. Now, if we wanted to, we could track the new core charges that are charged when we buy the part separately from where we track our used cores. Okay, that can be tracked separately on the general ledger. Now, if we want to do that, we actually have to select to put in a different product code, but I don't have one. So we'd have to create one. So we click on Add Product Code. This is going to be for used cores, and our description will be used cores. And we're going to create, we actually have an inventory account. Let's look. We have 13,250 used cores. Because remember, we don't track those other cores. Let's look at this again real quick. Let's go back into this. 13,200, right, is where we're tracking our new and used cores together right now. So let's look at this. And here, 13,200 is our inventory cores, which are our new ones. And we're going to create the one for used so we can track those in our inventory differently. So let's go ahead and do that. And of course, we have to set up an income and a cost of goods sold account for this as well if we are, for example, to charge a customer for a used core. Now, typically, we're not really going to be putting anything in the income or the cost of goods sold because we charge for them a used core in inventory, right? But then we return them back to the vendor for credit. So I'd say the vast majority of all of our core activity, our core transactions, are always occurring just in the inventory account. But occasionally, you will make some income by charging the customer for that used core. So let's look. We would put this under a 40,000 account. Now, I only have one for sales cores. So I actually need to create my own income account for sale of used cores. So I just click on Add GL Account, and we'll make it 40250, whoops, 250, and we're going to call it, let's keep it similar, we're going to call it Sales Used Cores. And we're going to make it a an income account. And if we weren't sure what it should be, guys, we could always slide this way over and say, what are all these here? Oh, right, these are all income accounts. So then we would know, okay, my type is going to be an income account, just in case you weren't sure. So we're going to select that as our sales account. Now we have to do a cost of goods, and it's going to look the same. It's going to be 50,000. I have cores. I don't actually have. Actually, I do. I have one down here. I must have. Oh, no, I thought I created one. Let's create another one. So we'll do, so it's similar. We'll say 50,250. So it's similar to our income account. So we go in here, 50,250, and this is COGS used cores. And this, again, if I weren't sure, it's a cost of goods, but if I weren't sure, move it over. Oh, that's right. It's a cost of goods sold account. And I would just look up for a, I think it must be down here. Whoops. Sorry, guys. Cost of goods sold account. Okay? And select. So here you can see I've created my own product code to track my used cores individually. And now I'm selecting it. Now, I would say vast majority of shops use them, use just a single cores account and have it all tracked under one product code. However, if you're a rebuilder, you may want to track these individually, especially if you actually are buying a lot of used cores and rebuilding your own parts, transmissions, that kind of thing. So that's just a little bit about the accounting, the nuts and bolts, not the flashy part of it, okay? Any questions on that part, on that accounting portion? Okay, hey, Nick and Tony, I just saw that you guys came in and I just unmuted your phone. So sorry, had you guys locked the hands tied there for a few minutes. Any questions on what we've got so far on the accounting?
That core banking report, is that something that is coming up in the new version?
You know, Rex, are you on with us?
Yes, I am.
So tell me a little bit more about that core banking report, Rex.
Well, it is a new report.
Right.
It's basically being added to the new one to be able to look at a glance to see where all your cores are, who owes you cores.
Okay, so I actually don't have any in my core banking. So if I want to print a list of used cores that are out and who has them, would that be if I were to create a purchase order?
No, if you sold a cored part to a customer and you answered that you did not receive a core, he would now be he'd be in the bank now. He owes you money. He owes you that core, so that you'll be able to return it.
Let's see if we can just do one for practice and see if we can throw a core on here. Here we go. So let's try this one. So if we select this, we're going to say OK, and we're core not received, deposit charged, and click OK. So it's a 3/21/1845. Let's look at that. So if I go to reports, inventory, core banking. Oh, do I need
to actually close out the invoice?
Okay. Let me go ahead and do that. I'm going to go ahead and order the part, guys, like I would normally, just so we're using our same workflow. And let's receive that part real quick. Okay, and let's receive it. That was a factory for today. And let's post it. Just kind of keep it all legit, all straightforward, like we would in real life, right? Okay, so now let's sell it. And pay and print SRO. And it says, okay, part without a cost, core deposit charged. Let's go back and change that. So my core deposit is $45, but I don't have a cost. So I will put one in there. And that's because that was...
Your screen has stopped updating for me for some reason. Anybody else seen that?
Yeah, it's stuck.
Updating either.
Okay, hold on. Let's see. I'm going to wait till I get...
Catching up.
You guys caught up to my... I'm on the sales detail information screen. So I did click on more, and I did put a cost in there because when I created that part in my inventory, I didn't actually have a cost in for my core. So now I'm going to go ahead and pay this out. And cash. So let's go back into our core banking report, inventory, core banking report, run report. Okay, so there it is. So it's saying that Brent Foster is holding on to one of my cores. So he may perhaps come back in a week and return that core. So at that point, we would have an opportunity to receive that core back and return it to our vendor for credit. So that's where the core banking report comes into play. Our valuation report, conversely, tracks what we have on hand. When we look at our core valuation, it says, okay, we actually have a couple of new cores, obviously have a bunch of used cores. We got to get back to our vendor for credit. Got a couple negatives in here, guys, because I have demo data. But this tells us our line total, you know, we got $832 minus these credits back worth of cores that, you know, I need to get out there, collect them up out of the shop floor and get them back for credit. So that's a very valuable way of tracking, that asset. And this here, the new cores, this $45, that actually is tracked. Let's look and see where that would be tracked. Instead of it being tracked as True Blue inventory, right? So 13,000 is our inventory parts. It's not going to be in that valuation. It's actually going to be in this valuation. So this dollar amount, $877. See how that works? And don't forget, for me, I've got my used cores and my new cores being tracked in here, right? So I didn't divide them out. Some people do. Some people do actually, like I said, create that separate product code and track them separately. But you can see this matches. My core valuation report is also $877. So you can see we're tracking new cores and used cores in the same spot on the general ledger. And technically it's considered an asset. Those are valuable pieces. Either we would return the part back to the vendor, who also would give us credit for one of these three that are worth $45. That's an asset, as well as the old dirty greasy ones we got to get back. That's as an asset as well. So that's how these are tied together into our inventory valuation on our general ledger. Kind of get into the nuts and bolts of that. Any questions on that, guys? The cores are pretty straightforward. It wasn't a whole lot that I wanted to get into, but I did have some folks that were doing some strange workflow. We were getting, some interesting transactions on the general ledger, and we're like, how the heck is that getting in there? And we realized that some folks were going through this out-of-part wizard, and again, just putting in, we talked about earlier, this was a big problem. People were adding amounts in here. This is only as if it's new system inventory and you've got a dirty, greasy core. Because they were saying, but Sabrina, I don't see it being tracked anywhere. Where is it being tracked? Well, let's go back to this. In the parts record, if you have a part with a core, let's go in here. If it says stock 1, or it would 0 in this case because I already sold it, we don't actually have a screen here that says we physically have one, because really we don't. But that's why we track it in its own spot on the general ledger under the cores product code to keep that straight. And then we have those two reports, the valuation report and the core banking report, to help you manage those assets when they're not back. You're not getting credit for them back from the vendor. So a pretty short webinar today, guys, unless you guys have some more questions.
I've got one for you.
Yes.
Let's say we've got a alternator going back for warranty.
Mm-hmm.
How are we going to deal with the cores going both ways?
You actually, so inside, let's say inside an RO, so remember we actually talked about this last week when we talked about the returns and warranties management. The same way, let's do this. Let's do a return and part from part list. So let's say we had this part, which number was it, 67 or 37? 67. Let's say this was going to be a warranty deal. We would go ahead and click select. Yes, I know it's already on there. And I'm going to get credit because I'm going to get the credit back from somebody for this, right? This is going to put it back in my stock, even though we know it's a broken part because it's a warranty. And it's going to say, let's see, old core return to customer, or, okay, Rex, this one, old core not returned to customer, no refund given. Oh, actually, it would probably be.
If this is a swap out and the first choice you chose that you received a core, then you should say the old core was returned to the customer.
Oh, good point, because the old core is actually on their vehicle, right? Right. Does that make sense, Walter?
You're doing a warranty where you're replacing the first one you put on there. So you're
Right.
putting on, you're taking this one off and putting it back in inventory, and you're taking one out of your inventory and putting it onto his vehicle. And you're telling the system that when you put the new one on, you received a core, which is basically this one, and because of the core exchange factor in there, you've got to tell it that you return the old core to the customer. That way you've got something to return.
Okay.
Without throwing you out of balance.
Right. So let's go ahead and click OK. So that's why it's going to give us a -1 to get credit back from our vendor. So what's going to happen is I'm going to have, after I close out this RO, of course I need to order my part originally, which I didn't, but I need to buy this part, but then I'm actually getting the part back and the core, so I'm going to have two things to receive. I'm going to receive the old core back from the customer, and of course I'm not charging him, but this way I'm going to be able to get the full amount refunded back to me from my vendor. In fact, let's write it down and let's go through it.
Yep.
Go ahead,
Let's return the part. Let's return the part to the vendor and receive the new one.
Okay, so let me go ahead and right here, I first have to order it, because I don't think I ordered it. Did I order that one yet, Rex? My DL32? I don't think so either. So
you can go into the, you can just go into the master record and look at it real quick.
Yeah, let's look. Because I think I was negative, whoops. Well, you know, it's showing 0 right now because I'm actually putting the credit on there. So let's take this off right now for a moment, and let's go ahead and order our part, because now I'll get, of course now it's not prompting me, but if you can see, if I went in here and I view my part master record at this point, it's saying -1. So I need to order it, and it says here I haven't got it on order. Okay, I've got a radiator hose on order. So let's go ahead and order that. So it's a DL3267. So we're going to restock it and say from CarQuest. I don't know what my amount is, so we're just going to put in DL3267. I don't even remember my cost on this one. Oh, we're just going to say 85. That's for fun. And we're actually, you could reserve it for that one repair order, but that would have prompted us if we had clicked in that order parts column on the, with the workflow that we have online to be able to do the restock parts. But since I went directly into this, I'm just going to throw it in stock, and that's okay. It still balances out. So I do have my cost and my core cost. So I'm going to post and update my inventory. Okay. So now, if I go back in here, we can see that this doesn't have a red circle, and if I right-click in it and check my part master record, my stock is correct. It's showing 0 because 1 is actually reserved for this RO. Okay? So now, when we do a return, highlight the labor, do a return, part from parts list, DL3267, 1. Okay, look at my cost. Actually, in reality, was 85. Well, I was close. I thought it was 80. I'm going to click OK, and old core return to customer, and click OK, because that's what's on their vehicle, right? That's what's sitting on their vehicle. So we're going to go ahead and post this off and accept payment. So now I have in my part the DL. See, I have one to return. It's right here. And it's not showing a used core because it thinks it's a, remember, there's always a new core charge associated with this. We just don't have a box down here that shows it. So now let's return it for credit. So we would do another restock parts ticket, and let's do the CarQuest. And here, I don't remember what our amount is. I'm going to click on Add Line Item, and I'm going to receive credit for returned part. And it is DL3267, 185, and then we're going to go ahead and click OK. And my core credit is right here. Can you see that $32, Walter?
Yeah,
okay,
I see
guys.
32.
Okay, so that's how we're getting the part credit and the core credit back. And we click OK, save, and post an update in our inventory for that credit memo. So that's how it's handling it in the background. Which, you know, kind of makes it nice, frankly, if you leave it all going to the same product code, just the cores. It just keeps it a little bit simpler. Like I said, it's just some of the larger shops that keep a lot of used cores on hand, the reman shops that do that. So any other questions on cores today, guys? Like I said, pretty straightforward. I just wanted to make sure everybody was aware of the nuts and bolts, how it was being tracked in the background for your accounting, and the reports that we had on hand to manage it. And again, there's a really cool feature I always used to forget about. If I'm in a click on restock and I go into, let's say, factory, and I have some credits, and I click choose to receive credit for returned used cores, 99% of the time you're going to have the cores right in here waiting for you. It's going to say, yep, you got a Denso reman starter out there. So you just click on return, and it says how many you have in stock that you're getting a credit for. And I can choose a quantity 2, quantity 1. Let's say I just had 1. I would just edit my line and say, the other one's out there somewhere. I'm just getting credit back for the 1 right now. And that's how you, it's a really nice way to track those cores. It's just a great checklist. And what's also kind of nice is you get to see what else you have that needs to go back to factory. I had 3 other cores that need to go back. But that's how we handle those. We post and update the credit memo. And then you'll notice if we jump back out here to our report, inventory, we're down to only 5. So that's how you just kind of go through and clean them all out. Any questions on any of those, guys? Okay, well, we're going to go ahead and wrap up today's webinar if you guys didn't have any other questions. Again, kind of the nuts and bolts, and I'll send a follow-up email. So if you guys have any questions or individual scenarios you want to cover, let us know. No webinar next week. We actually are going to be at the SEMA show in Las Vegas. So the week after that, we'll be we're having a rescheduling, and I'll post it on the website by the end of the week, guys. A rescheduling of that one webinar, customers as employees, as vendors. So I can show you how the whole trade feature works in MaxxTraxx and how you can deduct out of your employees' paychecks for payments on their accounts receivable accounts. So that's going to be 2 weeks from today, so no webinar next week. Well, thanks, everybody, for joining us. Have a great 2 weeks. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.